Chapter 2465. She sighed. He didn't want to mention this to Lu Xiaoyi, because it involved the filth within the orthodox Taoism. Even in front of friends, it was not good to air their dirty linen. Ma Lu left for 100 years. Actually, he didn't go anywhere else. It was a large-scale assembly organized by the orthodox Taoism. Participants were limited to half-immortals who had established their Tao. It covered all branches of Taoism, such as the Book of Changes, Black Tortoise, Three Pure Ones, Supreme, and so on. The main speaker was not a cultivator from the lower realm, but an immortal from the upper realm. He explained in detail the key points of establishing Tao, the taboo of the great Tao, all aspects, history and inheritance. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. It's just a training class. The kind that can be learned quickly? Tuition fees? The immortal court provides jobs? The advertisement should be like this. Hide it from your family and secretly become an immortal. She was speechless. This guy was never serious at all times. He was really bold. Ma Lu and I both participated in this training class. Oh, the assembly, Lu Xiaoyi was still pestering. Why didn't you call me? I'm also a Taoist. I'm also very orthodox. I have good roots. She ignored him. In the beginning, it was quite normal. There were about 3 Taoist true immortals teaching separately. It also touched on some taboo topics in the past. There was only one goal: to help half-immortals not take the wrong path due to cognitive deviation when they establish their Tao. Among us, many have already been planted with immortal seed. They don't actually need to participate. But more people still insist on themselves. This training is actually mainly aimed at these cultivators. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. It's really good to be a Taoist. I'll teach you how to become an immortal step by step. Help them get on the horse, steer the rudder, and send them off. The sword vein is awkward. I don't even know if there's a living thing on it. He was already used to this guy's sarcasm. When the training ended, most of the Taoist veins had their own arrangement. For example, the Book of Changes carried out an internal divination to distinguish between good and bad. Originally, this kind of thing offended the heavens, but now the heavenly Tao can't care too much, so everyone was a little insatiable. The Black Tortoise's Honesty Assembly, My Supreme Great Tao's Core Interconnection, and so on. The 3 Pure Ones created their own path of heart tempering, and so on. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. Yes, that's because after the company meeting, the various departments started to have small meetings to set goals, express their determination, and drink the blood wine. No matter what serious matter it was, Lu Xiaoyi would always change its tune. She was naturally immune to it. After we were done, we went our separate ways and found that only the 3 Pure Ones' path of heart tempering continued. The 3 Pure Ones have always been procrastinating and unconventional in their work. Originally, this wasn't a big deal. But since you've already reminded me, I've also been a little more careful. I've found an excuse to stay behind and ask around. You also know that the Taoist school is a sieve, and there are no secrets to speak of. After my investigation, I found out that on the surface, this path of heart tempering is to organize the half-immortals to temper their hearts, but its other purpose is to teach those who are disobedient and do things their own way on the great Tao. Of course, that includes Ma Lu. She laughed impudently, a little gloating. Lu Xiaoyi didn't understand. I don't believe that there are no disobedient disciples in your supreme branch. How do you discipline your own branch? She sneered. It's different. Our supreme branch is considered a small branch in the Taoist school. It's just a warning and admonishment. Moreover, we don't restrict our disciples too much when we establish our Tao. The 3 Pure Ones are different. As the big brothers of the orthodox Taoist school, they have to be different. The more complicated they make it, the more troublesome it will be. Lu Xiaoyi was a little confused. Path of heart tempering? Space trial? Or special mission? Don't tell me the 3 Pure Ones are so ruthless towards their disobedient disciples? Or is it just a lesson? She smiled. Not to that extent. How can they be so ruthless? Moreover, Ma Lu isn't the only disobedient one among the three pure ones. To be honest, the Taoist school is particular about letting nature take its course. They rarely force their disciples. I don't know why there's such a muddle-headed one this time. The so-called path of heart tempering can be understood as a trial space, a space where one can continuously climb up. As for the location, it's far away on the horizon but close in front of you. Actually, it's just starting from the land of the Yellow Dragon and climbing up. It's not leaving the Yellow Dragon but climbing up along the 36 heavens. Through this method, one can experience the difficulty of ascending to immortality. It has a great influence on the choice of the great Tao. It can make the cultivator more aware of their own position, the position of the orthodoxy, and the reason for the orthodoxy's actions. At the same time, it can also correct the deviation of the cultivator. Lu Xiaoyi was a little surprised. Ordinary half-immortals can also go up to the 36 heavens? She shook his head. It's not 36 heavens but 32 heavens. In the past, if one wanted to go up to the 36 heavens, one must either become an immortal or obtain the authorization of the immortal court. Half-immortals can also stay in the first 32 heavens to experience it. But now that the heavenly Tao has collapsed and the order of the universe has loosened, the immortal court has also changed. The change is that the restriction of the 36 heavens has loosened. One can climb the first 32 heavens without the authorization. At the same time, the immortal qi above the 32 heavens has loosened and started to disperse downwards. This process is a test of the cultivator's great Tao heart. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. I see. Then, can anyone go up? Or can only you Taoists or the three pure ones go up? What kind of impact will this kind of training have on Ma Lu? She spread his hands. How can it be so simple? Even among the branches of the orthodox Taoists, not just anyone can go up. So far, only the three pure ones can do it. They are the strongest in the immortal court. They can directly sense the loopholes in the 36 heavens and take advantage of them. It's not that other Taoists can't do this. If they discuss it with the three pure ones, they can also get such an opportunity. But this kind of training will actually have an impact on the people who go through the trial. For example, it will be more convenient for the immortals to plant seeds. Lu Xiaoyi's eyes focused. You mean, the three pure ones organized this trial to use the power of the immortals of the immortal court to plant seeds on the disobedient disciples of the three pure ones? She looked around and said softly, I didn't say that. Because no one has real evidence. But we Taoists communicate in private and think that this is the purpose of the three pure ones. Think about it. Under normal circumstances, the immortals can only plant seeds through the fragments of the great Tao after the Tao has been destroyed. This is a coincidence. If such a path of training is organized and you are allowed to climb up by yourself, from the first heavens to the 32 heavens, you are only a thin layer away from the 4 immortal heavens. If the immortal qi starts to disperse downwards, of course, there is the possibility of the immortals directly planting seeds on the half-immortals of the lower realm. The higher you climb, the easier it is to fall into the trap. For those cultivators who insist on themselves and are unwilling to become the pawns of the orthodoxy, it is full of danger. This danger is not the danger of their lives, but the danger of their ideals. Chapter 2466. Lu Xiaoyi somewhat understood. This was not a trial with a history, but a purposeful training of the mind that combined with the current environment. The universe was changing, and so was the celestial court. The 36 heavens was no longer only accessible to the night watchers, but everyone could go up. However, the method was more ingenious, and so far, only the three pure ones had mastered it. Therefore, the three pure ones used it for other purposes. Thinking about it, this situation would not last for long. One day, all cultivators would be able to climb up the 36 heavens, depending on their strength, The last 4 levels would not be able to go up. In short, a gap had been opened between the upper 4 heavens and the lower 32 heavens of the celestial court. Therefore, there was the possibility of transmitting something through this gap. The 3 pure ones put their half-immortal disciples up there so that the celestial ancestors above could brainwash the restless ones. Therefore, it was not the path of training the mind, but the path of brainwashing. It could also be seen that the 3 pure ones' alliance in the universe was still conservative, and the entire alliance was firmly in the hands of the old fellows in the celestial court of the upper world. Only then would he be able to command it like an extension of his arm, operating it as one. He was not interested in the strategy of the 3 pure ones. This was the inevitable way for a large organization to continue to occupy a dominant position in the new era. They had such strength, so of course they had to do something. The others were not that open, but they could not reach the level of the 3 pure ones, so they could not cheat legitimately. He did not care about these. What he cared about was whether his friend would be changed in such a trial. At least from the looks of it, Qing Xian had not been changed. There is a question that I have not been able to ask. Have you and Qing Xian been planted by the immortals? I only know that I have never merged with the Tao fragments. My method was to imprison them and torture them. Later, I found out that senior apprentice sister had never merged with it. She was stubborn and believed in Xianyuan. In the end, she had no karma and picked up her youth. Was it a good thing or a bad thing to be planted by the immortals? There was no conclusion. It involved the privacy of the cultivators, so it was inconvenient to discuss. But now the question is, should we help? What if Ma Lu felt that this might be an opportunity? Maybe he was willing to be recruited by the immortals? Do you feel comfortable just by touching a bit of immortal qi? If we act rashly, won't we be doing bad things with good intentions? Shi, you and Ma Lu are on the same side in terms of orthodoxy. Do you know anything about Ma Lu's situation? Shi snorted. Who would wear the same pants as Ma Lu? If we're talking about a close relationship, it's you, shit stick, and not me, right? That taciturn guy refused to say a word about himself. All the 3 pristine Taoists were like that. I don't know anything about him either. I only know that I've never fused with a fragment before. I don't think I've been planted with a celestial seed before. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been willing to work so hard on the life Tao. Lu Xiaoyi scratched his head. That's not easy. Let's not talk about how to pull that guy out of the trial. First, we need to make sure there's no need to use the toilet. However, she didn't share his worries. Shit stick, do you have to go through so much trouble? Of course, he had to drag him out. Let's not talk about things that are too complicated. Let's just talk about the simplest and most straightforward things. Out of his 4 friends, 3 of them had chosen themselves. How could he, Ma Bailu, stand alone? Are we still friends? If we're friends, we have to be on the same page. What he thinks isn't important. What's important is what we think. Lu Xiaoyi was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. Shi, you see, I've got a bull's horn in my head. Listen. Who cares what he thinks? We're all sticking to ourselves, so he has to follow the crowd. Otherwise, we're not friends. Since he can't choose himself, we'll help him choose. We'll be friends too. The 2 of them set the tone amidst their laughter. As friends, of course, they had to go through hardships together and enjoy blessings together. If it's difficult, you have to do it even if you don't want to. If you don't want to enjoy, well, you can choose not to enjoy. This is what true friends are like. What should we do? Lu Xiaoyi was a little annoyed. He was good at big moves, simple and violent and bloody massacres. However, Qing Xian's situation wasn't something that could be solved by massacres. His master was teaching his disciple a lesson. If he went on a killing spree, it would put Qing Xian in a difficult position. The key question was, even if he could kill, who should he kill? Could it be that he had to rush up to Xing State for 4 days? He would be crushed to death by the rules of celestial pressure before he could even make a move. Shishi chuckled. This matter can be said to be difficult, but it can also be said to be easy. If we do it ourselves, it'll be difficult. Even if you have a way to rush up to 36 days, do you want to use force or persuasion? Under the situation where the three pristine celestials are gathered, do you think you can withstand the attacks of so many celestials with your iron body? My idea is that we can't use force. It's best if we mix things up and let the outsiders do it for us. Lu Xiaoyi was so smart. He could tell the difference between good and bad. Buddhism? Shishi smiled wretchedly. It has to be Buddhism. Otherwise, who can withstand the wrath of the three pristine celestials, the most powerful branch of Taoism? If Taoism can climb up to 36 days, why can't Buddhism? Why should your Taoism push your disciples up to receive the cultivation of the celestial ancestors, and my Buddhism should suffer in silence? So as long as Buddhism can take the lead in this matter, 36 days will be a mess. Everyone will go up to train their hearts. We'll mix in and pull Ma Lu out. Lu Xiaoyi looked at Shishi. It was true that a scholar who had been away for 3 days had to be looked at with new eyes. Speaking of which, for a few people to be able to mix together, none of them were good people. They wanted to cheat everyone, including their own friends. What's the plan? Shishi was a little confused. You ask me, who should I ask? I'm only in charge of one direction. Don't you have the idea? The two of them stared at each other. After talking for a long time, neither of them had a good idea. Lu Xiaoyi's heart turned. Is the old man still here? Shishi's eyes lit up. Yes, yes. He's sleeping in senior sister's Tao Tablet of Youth. The two of them rushed to Yanchang's Tao Tablet of Youth. The owner was not there. Those who came here to study were basically Kuan cultivators. They were very curious about their appearance, but their faces had been tempered thousands of times. Why would they care about such things? When Ji curled up in a corner and slept. In his state, if he did not want anyone to know that there was such an existence in the Tao Tablet of Youth, he could do it, but he could not hide it from Lu Xiaoyi. Old man, let me ask you something. Don't play dumb. When Ji sat up helplessly, he was clear in his heart. Monkeys, this matter involves too many things. It's not something you can easily provoke, even if it's the orthodoxy behind you. What you see is only the tip of the iceberg of the three pristines' influence in the cultivation world of the universe. There are also things that you can't see at all, the things outside. This is not something that can be solved with brute force. Moreover, that kid Qingxian is not too dangerous. Why bother? Chapter 2467. In the surrounding space, the fight for the Tao tablets was calm on the surface, but in reality, there was a turbulent undercurrent. They were all using their strength. Putting aside a freak like Lu Xiaoyi and a strange tablet, the competition between the Tao tablets had its own rules. There was scheming, but there was also tacit understanding. It was inevitable that they were not convinced of each other's strength, but because the time was not up yet, it did not seem that intense. But even if it was not intense, it was still tit for tat, just like how Lu Xiaoyi was kicked off the top of the Sword Tao tablet after only a few months. When you stand at the top, everyone is your enemy. The Sword Tao tablet was just an accident. The real competition had nothing to do with Lu Xiaoyi. How much power could one person have? At most, he was just a Xiantian Dao. How much influence could he have? The core competition was still between the old and the new, between humans and nature, and between Taoism and Buddhism. Only the competition between forces could determine the trend. Before Lu Xiaoyi's trump card was revealed, this was the main theme. Among them, when it came to scheming, Taoism and Buddhism were the most important. This was also the eternal theme of the universe's cultivation world. It was because of this theme that the Tao tablet with the highest Tao aura in the surrounding space of the land of the Yellow Dragon would definitely be between Taoism and Buddhism. They would chase each other and take turns to be the banker, and the atmosphere of the surrounding space was also brought up by this competition. The popularity kept rising and would only reach its peak in the new era. Taoism, Taishu, Yin-Yang, 5 elements, and lightning took turns to fight for the top spot. Buddhism, Nirvana, merit, and creation, one after another, not to be outdone. Just like the dragon boat race, the top 10 dragon boats took turns to fight for position. What they fought for was their spirit and will. It was also the final competition of power between Taoism and Buddhism in the new era. It was vulgar and shallow, but now was not the time to keep a low profile. If they endured now, they would lose their momentum, and it would be difficult to make a comeback in the end. From the beginning, they would have to bite each other to death. As for the specific competition of the Tao aura, it was actually not a very stable process. But in the stability, there would be sudden outbursts and sudden outbursts. Lu Xiaoyi's sword Tao tablet was purple. This was a standard cramping outburst. There was no plan, it was purely depending on the situation, so it could not last long. It was an accident. The so-called explosion under normal circumstances was, for example, a 5 elements Tao steel. The steel master proposed a brand new, groundbreaking concept in a certain domain and obtained the general approval of the heavenly Tao and cultivators. Then, under the conscious push of public opinion below, it suddenly jumped up. It was like a bonfire that was suddenly splashed with a bucket of oil, and the seedlings of the fire jumped up high. Here, it was reflected as taking the lead in the magnificent crown of Tao Qi. Of course, how could there be so many new outbursts of outbursts? After a period of time had passed, another bonfire would be poured with a bucket of oil, and the first place would change. Taoists and monks from different camps were showing their presence in the land of the Yellow Dragon. Since the establishment of the Tao in the surrounding space, they had never stopped. They were not only fighting for the top position, but also for the general trend of the new era. They could not tolerate the other side dominating the rankings. Before Lu Xiaoyi's sword Tao steel went berserk, the great void Tao steel of the Taoist sect had been dominating the rankings. After Lu Xiaoyi appeared out of nowhere and caused trouble, it fell into a situation where many heroes rose up together. No one had an obvious advantage, but looking at the rotation order, the next to dominate the rankings should be the Buddhist sect. The situation was indeed developing in this direction. Obviously, the Merit Tao tablet had been secretly accumulating power. It was just short of a barrel of oil. Because they could clearly see the trend of the Tao aura, many cultivators waited in the Merit Tao tablet, wanting to be the first to see it. They wanted to see what kind of great discovery this monk had made in the Merit Tao aura. Lu Xiaoyi and Shi were among them as well. Like the thousands of other cultivators, they were waiting with bated breath. The Tao steel was also growing. In the beginning, it could barely hold 100 people. Now it could easily hold tens of thousands of people. The Merit Tao steel was close to 1,000,000 feet tall. It was also one of the Tao steels with the largest capacity. With a capacity of more than 100,000 people, this place would soon become a noisy carnival. This was also a scene that the Buddhists were very willing to see. The eruption of Tao Qi required the support of popularity. Regardless of whether these people supported it or not, they were all guests. The topic of discussion was their bearing. Therefore, I've already released the news that I'm going to update my merit breakthrough on a certain day. I welcome everyone's guidance and appreciation. Sometimes, the Taoists would also cause trouble by fighting in the arena. At that time, it would depend on which side had a bigger barrel to fuel the fire. This was also a frequent interaction between the Buddhists and Taoists. However, this time, the Taoists were obviously not ready. Therefore, they allowed the Buddhists to gather momentum and watched coldly from the sidelines. Today was the day when the Merit Tao steel would update its progress. Because there was a notice in advance, many people came. They were all dabbling in the Merit Tao. Most of them were monks who came to support the event. There were also many Taoists who came to cause trouble. The Tao stele that could hold 100,000 people was almost full. However, the magical space of the Tao stele was not crowded. Is it good to not set up anything outside? Will it not be effective? She was a little worried. Lu Xiaoyi reminded him, not setting up anything is the best setting up. There are many immortals in the three pure ones. Their abilities are unpredictable. If we set up something here, it will be exposed. I don't care. What about you? Maybe you'll be charged with the crime of internal strife. You'll be beaten to death and become a cow or a horse in your next life. She was speechless. Shit stick, if you were to gain power one day, would others still have a way to live? Lu Xiaoyi smiled. We are here to watch the show. Moreover, I also know about merit, so it is completely reasonable. There are also tens of thousands of Taoists here. Each of them has their own thoughts, so no one will notice us. Let's remove ourselves first. Smile. Smile sweetly. Don't look like you have a deep grudge. People will think that you are here to find trouble. Do you want me to find you a Maitreya Buddha statue and you can smile like that? As the two of them teased each other, more and more people gathered around them. Seeing that the auspicious time was approaching, they prepared to update the Merit Tao stele. However, they saw a familiar person squeezing over. It was Hands-Free, who they had not seen for a long time. This monk's position in the Heavenly Guard Association was not low. He was also a committee member. He strongly advocated to maintain the Heaven's Choice continent. This was a battle of ideals, but it did not affect the relationship between the two of them. Are you here to take a look at the event? It is the Merit Steel's fortune to have a Buddhist expert like you here. The two of them had interacted in the small Sumer realm. Hands-Free knew that this swordsman had a deep understanding of Buddhism, especially in the Merit Tao. It was normal for him to appear here. It was the choice of every cultivator who wanted to pursue the great Tao. A new direction, a new breakthrough. This was the motivation for the growth of the great Tao. Chapter 2468. P.S. Looking for guaranteed monthly votes. Among the three of us, there's bound to be a teacher. To be able to participate in such a grand event is my fortune, as well as the fortune of all living beings. Lu Xiaoyi spoke politely, but his words did not come from his heart. Hands-Free, on the other hand, was very friendly. Perhaps he felt uneasy about going against him, so he came over to ease the tension. Once he started talking, there was no end to it. She wanted to chase him away, but did not know how to do so. Lu Xiaoyi had an idea. Master, I was setting up surveying points in the Heaven's Choice continent, but who knew that the three fellows from the Heaven Protection Society would follow behind me? I set them up while they caused trouble. Isn't this a little too much? You see, I came from the sword vein, so my family's resources are limited. I only managed to accumulate a few hundred surveying points, and they were destroyed by you guys? You didn't even give me an explanation after that? Since I've met you today, I want to know if there's any compensation for my losses? Hands-Free cursed in his heart. Do you think you're lacking in these trifles? You just want to fight over who's right and who's wrong. So don't think it's worth anything. I really can't give it to him. This is my principle. He played dumb. Of course. I'll go back and discuss it with my friends. You know that the Heaven Protection Society does not have a president, so we have to discuss everything. It's not good for one person to decide everything. And please do as you wish. I still have to help senior brother Chiu to maintain the scene, so I won't disturb the two of you. Hands-Free found an excuse to leave. He was unwilling to give in on the difference in ideology. This was also the norm for practitioners of his realm. It was not something that could be fooled just because they were familiar with each other. After a few moments, the Merit Monument finally began to change. Lu Xiaoyi focused and understood that Master Chioda's new breakthrough in merit was due to the division of the Heaven's Choice continent, which led to a new system of merit, man and nature. How to achieve a balance in merit. This was not a completely mature system, and there were still many areas to be perfected. But it had to be admitted that it raised a new problem for everyone to adapt to the new era. When the era developed from nature to the current stage where nature and man coexisted, how should merit be calculated? Destroying nature and protecting man, is that merit? Protecting nature and diluting life, is that merit? In this universe, which is more important? Or were living beings more important? Or was there any standard that could be measured between the two? To what extent would one destroy nature in order to protect living beings? One would gain merit. How many lives would be sacrificed to protect it, and merit would naturally appear? This was more like a question and answer. There might not be only one answer. He was afraid that as time passed, the debate would continue without an end. But as a barrel of oil for the merit and virtue monument, it did have a burning effect. Such a thought-provoking question was the attitude of the exploration of the great Tao. It was a new way of thinking that cultivators wanted to see, a new idea. Even if there was no answer for the time being, it had caused a fierce collision of different ideas. Therefore, from the perspective of Buddhism, they were very successful. Like adding oil to a raging fire, the merit obelisk, because of this very advanced concept, brought about a stage breakthrough in the Tao Chi magnificent crown. It broke through the 10 million feet barrier in one go and became the most eye-catching first obelisk in the land of the Yellow Dragon. But it didn't stop, because someone had added a new concept into it. That was the concept of giving back. Nature provided resources and guarantees for living beings' cultivation, but what did humans do for nature? In the harmony between man and nature, no one was more important than the other. The key was mutual respect. In this world of cultivation, nature had always provided the most basic cultivation resources and environment for living creatures. This was also the most fundamental cornerstone for the flourishing development of cultivation in this era. As the new era approached, the cultivation beings ascended the stage of the universe and occupied a place had become an unstoppable trend. Then, after the cultivation beings, mainly humans, obtained such an important position, what should they give back to the universe? This was the focus of measuring the harmony between humans and nature in the new era, how to determine whether there was merit, and how much merit there was. This new point of view caused a huge commotion in the Merit and Virtue Monument. Countless spectators found a new direction in the update of the Merit and Virtue Monument, a thought-provoking direction. Then, there was a powerful person among the crowd who answered on the spot, almost perfectly replying to this thorny question that everyone felt was difficult to solve. The true charm of cultivation lay in this. At this moment, people were not divided into Taoism and Buddhism, and the heart was not divided into private and public. In a short moment, the 100,000 cultivators in the monument achieved a rare harmony and resonance on this question. The true Tao. Externally, a trace of color suddenly appeared on the Merit and Virtue Monument's Tao Chi crown. With the support of the color, although the Tao Chi crown did not grow any taller, a mysterious force seemed to pierce the sky. Looking up, everyone in the Merit and Virtue Monument realized that something seemed to have been pierced by the power of the Merit and Virtue Great Tao. This allowed them to vaguely see the legendary 36 days. Monk Jude and his group of Buddhists, including the hands-free, were also shocked by this change. This time, the addition of human and nature content in the Merit and Virtue Monument had perfectly achieved their goal, to let the Merit and Virtue Monument take the lead. But because it was too perfect, the result was a little out of his control. Everyone knew very well that the color on the Merit and Virtue Monument's Tao Chi crown only meant one thing. It had received the approval of the heavenly Tao, and the support of all cultivators in the cultivation world of the universe, regardless of Taoism or Buddhism. Only when Taoism and Buddhism worshipped each other would there be color. The concept of human and nature was proposed by the Buddhists. In other words, the higher concept of giving back must be proposed by the Taoists. Only then would Taoism and Buddhism be harmonious and produce color. There was excitement, but also unwillingness. Looking at the cheering monks below, as well as the equally excited Taoists, Jude knew that he had won and lost. This time, the Taoists played very cleverly. They did not use another Tao monument to compete with the merit and virtue monument. Instead, they chose to add their own concept to the merit and thus produce color. In other words, the merit and virtue great Tao was not only Buddhist, but also Taoist. With the approval of the heavenly Tao and the audience, the color was born. What was done could not be changed. In broad daylight, they brazenly added the cornerstone of the great Tao, but you could not remove it, because this brick was just right on the supporting point. If you removed it, the building would collapse. The great Tao thief. Who was it? The hands-free's sharp gaze swept across the cheering crowd of Taoists. Among them, there were two guys who jumped particularly high and danced with joy. It was as if they had been sensed by the great Tao, and were immersed in the light of merit and could not control themselves. It can't be right? Such quick-wittedness, such depth, to penetrate the essence of human and nature with a single sentence? Who was it? What was the purpose? Just to get involved. Chapter 2469. But there wasn't much time left for Jude and the rest. They didn't have time to find out who was the one who added fuel to the fire, because they had more important things to do now. What did the power produced by the merit Tao Chi magnificent crown pierce through? Why did it reveal the 36 days? But someone knew. She was very impressed. Shit Lu's ability was not only in the sword, but also in the mouth and thoughts. In his excitement, he spoke without thinking. Shit stick, your pants are open. Lu Xiaoyi glared at him. Be serious, don't talk nonsense in such an occasion. I still have underwear. If I really show it, I'll scare them to death. She was a little anxious. Although he never said it, his concern for his friends was reflected in his slight anxiety. Do you want me to find a few people to lead the crowd? Don't worry, they'll definitely be on our side. They won't talk nonsense. Lu Xiaoyi flatly refused. No need. The more we do, the more mistakes we will make. Let's just wait. Soon, cultivators in such a state of mind will take risks. With the understanding of cultivation, the immortal court, and the behavior of the immortals, he was now more and more aware of the so-called bottom line in the cultivation world for millions of years. Where was the tacit understanding? What was acceptable? What could the other party be helpless against? What couldn't the other party tolerate? As for this matter, he was very clear that as long as he stretched out his hand, he would definitely be noticed. If human immortals couldn't see it, there were true immortals. If true immortals couldn't see it, there was still golden immortals. No matter what, it couldn't be done without being noticed. So the key was, did your behavior conform to the norms? Did you expose your malice? Were there any traces of a conspiracy? If you could avoid these, even if the three pure ones knew that you played an important role in it, they couldn't do anything to you. This was the unspoken rule that had maintained the immortal court for millions of years. This was the reason for the subsequent series of measures. Was it normal to enter the merit stele? Of course it was normal. The renewal of merit was highly anticipated. Nearly 100,000 cultivators poured into the Tao stele, and more than 30,000 Taoists. This was a normal enlightenment that couldn't be any more normal. Was it normal to supplement the elements of merit? Of course it was normal. Any Taoist disciple who excelled in merit had the obligation to strike down the arrogance of Buddhism on such an occasion. Firstly, it was because of the great Tao itself. Secondly, it was because the teachings of Taoism were not inferior to others. Since everything is normal, it's the work of a Taoist who wholeheartedly pursues the Tao. You can't say that I have other motives. However, this outcome was somewhat unexpected. After poking a hole in the sky, the path to 36 was faintly revealed. This was actually what the three clear Dao lineages had done in the past. They controlled the yin and yang Dao steel to reach the top of the rankings. Once the Dao Qi crown reached a certain height, they completed the heavenly guidance of their respective three Pure One's disciples. In fact, the operation at that time didn't really break through the sky. It was only because the immortals of the immortal court used a method to guide it successfully. Others couldn't feel it. Only the three Pure Ones and half-immortals could see it. It was called the path of heart refinement. But this time, the Buddhists did not rely on the help of the immortals. They broke through the sky with their own abilities. It was because of Lu Xiaoyi's hot cooking oil, and also because the restrictions of the 36 days were getting weaker and weaker. One day there would be no need to spend so much effort. All the cultivators would be able to clearly see the existence of the 36 days. The closer they were to the end of the era, the clearer it would be. But this time, it was different from the three Pure Ones' sneaky actions. It was openly displayed in front of all the cultivators. There was no distinction between Taoists and Buddhas. It wasn't that the Buddhists were Dafa compared to the Taoists, but that the Buddhists didn't realize it at all. They were completely unprepared. There were 100 people of all shapes and sizes. There were 10,000 people of all shapes and sizes. There were 100,000 people of all shapes and sizes. They had originally come to the land of the Yellow Dragon to fight for opportunities. Everyone had a surging desire to improve, but they couldn't find a way to vent it. Once this hole was opened, it would be terrible. Someone shouted, "True immortal of the great Tao, do you have guts?" Hundreds of figures had already soared into the sky, breaking through the barrier of the Tao tablet and heading straight for the hole. Following closely behind were thousands, tens of thousands. In the blink of an eye, the Merit Tao tablet was empty, leaving only a few cultivators. It wasn't that they didn't want to go up, but that they wanted to take a closer look. The few monks looked at each other, not knowing what to do. They didn't know if they had succeeded in reaching the top this time, or had they caused a disaster. They might have extracted a small Buddha statue, but it was too old and they couldn't see its original appearance. Could it be that it was deliberately mixed up? They used the Buddhist secret technique and began to communicate. In an instant there was a reply. The three Pure Ones are despicable, secretly opening the heavenly road and not showing it to others. Since you have such an opportunity, just go up. The three Pure Ones aren't the only immortals in the immortal court. The hands-free received the notification and smiled. Everyone, go up. Don't worry, the immortal court is already in chaos. The immortals of each family are looking for their successors. We can't let the Taoists have their way. The monks stood up one after another, no longer hesitating. The hands-free was about to get up, but he saw two people pulling and shoving in the empty Merit Tao tablet. If it were anyone else, he wouldn't care, but these two, he couldn't let them stay out of this. In any case, they could be considered half a friend. How could he let the universe's biggest shit-stirrer stay out of the process of disturbing the three Pure Ones? If there were any unforeseen events in the future, he would have a place to shirk responsibility. He came straight over, puzzled. What's the matter with Custodian C? The two of them were fine, why are they fighting? She was indignant. Master, please be the judge. When the heavens open the path, the great Tao will reveal itself. It's the time for us cultivators to bravely advance. But he's as timid as a mouse, saying that the heavenly road has just opened, and he has no virtue, no talent, and no backing. He can't be careless. He's overcautious and timid. He doesn't look like a swordsman. I think he's become a fool. Where's the spirit of your sword Tao tablet? Has it been eaten by dogs? Lu Xiaoyi waved his hand, looking calm and collected. Looking up is right, don't take the neighbors. Following the Tao, spring comes. Like seeing flowers bloom, like seeing the new year. True and not snatching, the strong are easy to be poor. Secluded people empty the mountain, plucking apples when crossing the water. Thin words of love, long days of Tianjun. The hands-free knew that this guy was pretending to be virtuous. Don't take the neighbors? Your foundation in the fifth ring was all taken from your neighbor's house, okay? He could only persuade a robber to go down the mountain to visit the rich. He had never done such a strange thing before. As long as he was involved with this guy, everything would become abnormal. Custodian C, listen to me, it's pure and honest. Lu Xiaoyi couldn't stand the master's good intentions and was in a difficult position. So, I have to make this trip? Hands-free said earnestly. Custodian C, you're not confused by external things and don't take shortcut. You're the role model of our generation. This time, why don't you listen to my advice and go up to take a look? You're the one who advised me? Lu Xiaoyi was still a little reluctant. Yes, whatever karma there is belongs to me. Hands-free said firmly. Lu Xiaoyi chuckled and glared at Shi, who was beside him. You should learn from other masters. You're so eloquent that the words you say can move people's hearts. Unlike you, who forcefully tugs at the slightest disagreement. What a scandal! Shi held back his laughter and said yes. Chapter 2470. Lu Xiaoyi followed behind the others and exited the Dao Stele. They entered the Heaven Ascension Passage and began to slowly climb up. That monk is still thinking about slandering you? I wonder what he's thinking? Shi laughed. The two of them had put on a double act so that the monk would come and take over. This way, some of the things they did would have karma. In the eyes of the immortals, this was very important. Lu Xiaoyi sighed. I've lost another friend. Actually, I thought highly of him before. He can be considered a gentle monk. What a pity. 36 days. The first day was Emperor Huang Xingtian. For the two of them, there were no obstacles and they easily passed it. It was not only them. Almost every half-immortal had a gradual and difficult process of climbing the 36 days. This was already the 36 days of the mutation. The mutation started when the 32nd heaven Jia Yi Tian and the 33rd heaven Tai Ching De Qi Tian. There was a certain degree of infiltration. The immortals from the three pure ones used this kind of infiltration to communicate with their disciples in the lower realms. In the process, they gave pointers, corrected, and even planted a hidden immortal seed. However, the immortal pressure of the four heavens of the sage realm would also infiltrate through these infiltration points. The immortal pressure leaking out from the 32nd heaven was the most serious. Then it would go down, the 31st heaven, the 30th heaven. When the human cultivators of the lower realms climbed up the heaven ascension stairs, the immortal pressure would become stronger and stronger. A few days ago, it was almost undetectable. However, after the 10th heaven Xian Ming Gong Huatian, there was a slight feeling of immortal pressure. From then on, it became heavier and heavier, and it was difficult to move forward. The gap started from here. When a true monarch encountered immortal pressure, they had no ability to resist. Even Yang spirit true monarchs were all defeated at the 10th heaven. This was because of the difference in realms. One could imagine that as the new era arrived, the immortal pressure leaking out would become stronger and stronger. There would be a day when the true monarchs would not even be able to reach the first heaven. Those who could normally pass through the 10th day were all half-immortals. Regardless of whether it was the ancient law's decline realm, they all had the ability to use their body's power to go against the immortal pressure. As for how far they could go, it became a matter of comparison between them. They had been in the land of the Yellow Dragon for many years and had been immersed in the comprehension of the great Tao. They had nowhere to vent their exuberant energy. Since there was such a good place to compete and there was no need to worry about any karma, no one was willing to stop. They would climb as high as they could. They were also worried that as time passed, the 36 days of immortal pressure would become heavier and heavier. In the future, they might not be able to climb as high as they did. No one wanted to leave behind any regret. The 36 days started to become empty. Lu Xiaoyi and Xi were both at the first step of the half-immortal realm. In fact, they were in the middle of the half-immortal realm. Above them were cultivators at the second step, and below them were the so-called evildoers. Of course, these evildoers were no longer called evildoers. With their first step primordial spirit realm, it was basically impossible for them to successfully establish their Tao before the end of the epoch. There was no time. After this matter, I will probably have to leave for a period of time. I have to find a place to climb up. Xiaoyi, you have to hurry up. Don't stop at this step when the epoch really changes. That would be awkward. The two of them climbed up side by side, and Xi casually talked about his plan at a leisurely pace. Lu Xiaoyi nodded. How could he let his guard down in this aspect? However, the process of his special upper realm was fixed. He had to wait for the collapse of the 24th Great Tao before he could take the next step. This could not be brought forward. We have to make some arrangements in the heaven-splitting society. We have to make overall arrangements for those who have the need for upper realm, personal matters, and those who are in the process of establishing their Tao. Don't let the committee run away and leave an empty shell. Xi nodded and did not forget to complain. This should be Ma Lu's job. Xiaoyi, are you treating us like donkeys? Lu Xiaoyi's expression did not change. I have too many things to do. I can't hide from them. As they chatted, they climbed up. They were not in a hurry. So many years had passed, and this little bit of time was not a problem. Immortals planting seed. Planting seeds alive was different from planting seeds with Tao dissipation. Planting seeds with Tao dissipation referred to the method that the golden immortals used to plant great Tao fragments. Planting seeds was done silently. As long as one fused with the fragments, one would unknowingly be affected. Whether one was willing or not, it could not be transferred by the cultivator's will. It would be influenced by time. As for how long it would take for the transfer to succeed, it depended on the situation. It also depended on the golden immortal's ability and the cultivator's will. Planting seeds alive was very rare, because the immortal rules did not allow it. For example, the three clear Taoism's method this time was to make use of the loopholes in the 36 days of chaos to provide the immortals with a rare opportunity to plant seeds in close proximity. The advantage was that they could target the target. They could formulate different strategies according to the specific situation of the target, and the success rate was very high. The disadvantage was that they had to obtain the target's consent and cooperation. The reason why they were not too worried was that they knew that Ma Lu's Tao heart was really like a toilet stone. It was smelly and hard. Even if it was an immortal, an elder immortal of the three clear Taoism, it would not be easy to subdue him. That was why it was called the path of tempering the heart. It was to temper a heart that refused to submit. Unwilling? Then they would temper it until you were willing. Isn't there a night watchman on every level? Now that we uninvited guests have come up, why isn't there anyone coming out to stop us? Xi was indignant. Lu Xiaoyi laughed. They're just there in name. It's just an empty title. What's there to guard on this day? How can it be stolen by others? It's better to let a few dozen dogs. 20 days later, Xi also felt the pressure. His ascension began to slow down. Compared to a pervert like Lu Xiaoyi, he was not just a little bit behind. But he was not convinced. Little E, you climbed higher than me. I have nothing to say. I won't compare myself to a freak. But that guy Ma Lu can also climb so high? I don't understand. Is there such a big gap between us? Lu Xiaoyi consoled him. Don't forget, when Ma Lu came up, he borrowed the power of his yin-yang Tao tablet. It must be convenient. And the three clear Taoists have the help of immortals. How can you compare to him? On the 26th day, in the Origin Abyss Grotto Heaven, Xi finally stopped struggling. I think the scenery here is not bad. I'll just walk around here. Little E, you go by yourself. Don't worry about me. Lu Xiaoyi laughed loudly. Stubborn duck. You are one of the few who climbed the highest. What's there to be dissatisfied about? Unlimited scenery at the peak. Let's go. I'll go directly to the 33 heavens. I'll anger you to death. She waved his hand and said, Go, go. The 33 heavens is good. If you're crushed to death, there won't even be a corpse left. I can save a coffin. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.